Hey, chat. I hope everybody is having a great Friday. I saw this story. I came across this story yesterday. I went backwards on it a little bit. I was excited to hear. We always hear perjury. Somebody's lying on the stand, but how often is it that they face any repercussions? And what about a cop that lies? What about an investigator that lies? What about someone lying with the capacity to significantly impact somebody's outcome in the criminal justice system? So, came across this story yesterday where right here on the screen we have Michael Merkel. He is an investigator with the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office that has been arrested. He's been taken into custody on perjury charges. And this case, it was a pretty high profile case. The murder, the unaliving of Betsy Faria. Her husband took the fall for it. He was convicted for the murder, but his conviction, it was overturned. He was retried. I think he was convicted. We're going to get into the details specifically. And then we found this foul play, and now he's been exonerated. This is going to take about like a decade and change to play out. So fast forwarding to why we have this story, why everything's in the news, is because we're actually getting perjury charges. Remember, it's got to be a prosecutor's office that decides, you know what, we're actually going to pursue perjury charges when somebody we put on the stand lies. So I think it's just rare that you hear this. Um, Taking a cursory glance at the story, we've got wrongful convictions. We had a theory of the family dog having involvement. We have someone impersonating a Dateline production to scheme someone along. There's a lot of stuff going on in this case. And when we look at it, you just got to wonder how many other times somebody's been wrongfully convicted, and those who contribute to that wrongful conviction, there's no penalties. So we're going to start with this story reader version. This was from a few days ago. It won't show the date here while we're reading it, but this was initially published on June 3rd. So like 2.5 weeks ago. How a lie told on the witness stand may have wrongfully convicted Russ Faria. This is the husband. Russ Faria, and this is taking place in Lincoln County, Missouri. Russ Faria originally took the fall for the 2011 murder of his wife, Betsy. Now a former investigator with the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office is accused of lying on the stand in Faria's trial. Prosecutors on Tuesday charged Michael Merkel, and again, this was like first week of June, with 2 counts of perjury and 2 criminal trials to secure a murder conviction. The 2 counts are for each trial. The charges stem from the case of Russ Faria, who was accused of murdering his wife Betsy in 2011. The case went to trial in 2013. So right there, right? Imagine just the investigation and getting to trial. Assuming we get it, even if we got an acquittal here, nothing further happened, this still would have been 2 years of this man's life, who lost his wife. Somebody murdered his wife. Like, that's not a fact that changes. And the investigation and however long this 2013 trial took to play out, even if he was acquitted, that's still problematic to me. So he ends up being convicted. His conviction was later overturned in a 2015 retrial, and Faria was freed after spending 3 years in prison. In 2021, Betsy's friend, now this is where we get some of the crazy details of the story, you guys. Pam Hupp, she was charged in the case with first-degree murder. We're going to get some more details about Hupp. Actually, let's see, so you guys can put a face to a name. Let's see if this has a quick picture for you guys. Alrighty. So, and this looks a little different than, the pictures of when she's going into court, but Pam, and this is Betsy over here. So in 2021, Pam Hupp is charged. This is a decade after the murder. A jury trial in St. Charles County is scheduled to begin in August of 2026. So she's got a long way to go. Innocent until proven guilty, but let's see what they have on her. Hupp is already serving a life sentence for the 2016 murder of Louis Gumpenberger, whom Hupp lured to her house in what prosecutors said was an attempt to frame Faria so she could divert attention from herself amid a reinvestigation into Betsy's death. Red flags? In a probable cause statement, prosecutors said Merkel lied about photographic evidence in Faria's original 2013 trial. Lincoln County Sheriff Rick Harrell said it has taken years to get to this point after his team began investigating the original botched case to seek justice. Theory about a dog. Theory about a dog. Harrell explained in the original case, prosecutors believe the family dog played a role. Isn't that a little role reversal here? According to court documents, Faria told police his dog was outside when he returned home to find his wife dead. So dog's outside. Dog's outside. Prosecution think dog has something to do with it. After a blood stain that looked like a possible dog paw print was found on Betsy's clothes. Now, hold on a minute. Anybody that knows dogs, would you think a bloody paw print on someone, like, I can imagine right now, if I was laying unconscious and bleeding, right? I had a nosebleed or something, I'm laying on the ground. The dogs I've had, the pets I've had in my life, dog, cat, whatever, they would do that little paw tap thing. They would come up and they would go, boop, boop, hello, are you okay? So what does the prosecution think of this possible dog print? Like, do they know how dogs work? So this possible dog print is found on Betsy's clothes. In a possible dog print. They're not even sure it's a dog print. It's a blood stain that looked like a possible dog print. Investigators looked into a theory. They looked into a theory. Where did the theory come from? That Faria took the dog outside after Betsy's murder and cleaned up the blood. So this is why they're going to circulate what they're seeing and scope in on Russ, the husband, as being the perpetrator. The theory was that the dog stepped on the victim's blood and on her pants. They said they believe that any other evidence of the dog present in the house was cleaned up by the person responsible for the murder, Harrell said. They said they could identify a trail of blood from the patio door and the kitchen, and they theorized that the person responsible for the murder had done this. All right, so they're saying they could identify a trail of blood from the patio door and the kitchen. So again, we're not getting the prints. So this is going to be important. We're not getting like visualizations of the blood because everything was supposed to be cleaned. So we're going to be dealing with like luminescence. Harrell explained the idea was that the suspect knew the dog well. Well, you know, they theorized it was only Russ. Only Russ. Russ is the only person that could be familiar with this dog, and it was he, only he, can put the dog outside in circumstances of those events, Harrell said. What a tunnel vision concept. Anybody that breaks into any house could open a door or leave a door open, and the dog could find their own way outside, let alone shoo the dog outside. This is just like, this is the tunnel vision at work. This is how they narrowed it down and just said, it's got to be Russ, so we've got to make everything else point to Russ. Guys, hello everybody, by the way. Hello everybody. Hate a Factual Lie, Andrew Reed, SteffJK, Sonia, Jeannie. By the way, you guys, there is a Richard Allen Delphi, a fundraising stream over on Nick Staro's channel with Andrea Burkhart, Defense Diaries, Potentially Criminal, Excited Utterance, Criminality, Mowing the Deep End, maybe some more. That's going to start in about an hour from now. And then at 7:30 p.m. tonight, Ian Runkle of the Bailey, has Bob Alessi and Yannetti. He's doing a panel show with the Karen Reed attorneys. So there's already like 500 people waiting in the chat for that. That's 7:30 Eastern. So about 3.5 hours from now. So what are you guys saying here about this dog theory? Yeah. Hey, Andrew, thanks. Hit the like button, you guys. That'd be awesome. No pressure, though. Brooklyn says 2011 to 2025. Isn't there statute of limitations? I don't know about the perjury charges specifically. I don't know what the statute of limitations would be, but I assume if there is and that's beyond scope, um, we'll see that be an issue raised by Merkel's attorneys. Yeah, it's Fief says, oh boy, just got done with Karen Reed and now this. Yeah, the dog theory is crazy. We just had a case end where the dog couldn't have done anything. It's blasphemy to even suggest that. We're just going to ignore the dog entirely. Forget Chloe. And now over here, we're like, the dog obviously proves because this paw print kind of looks, this blood print kind of looks like a paw print. Obviously, this is the only thing that could have happened. Like, what? It's just such a, when you put it side by side, the common denominator is still just that tunnel vision. You have your sight set on somebody and you're going to fit whatever you're taking in consciously or without realizing you're doing it to the thing you're trying to confirm. And yeah, Lauren says poor Russ. Like, what an awful thing anytime wrongful convictions suck, but a wrongful conviction, being accused of killing someone that you didn't kill, someone that you loved, like, I just feel like there's just such an extra layer there. So, just crazy. Yeah, this is gonna be the comment we read with. My cat smacked me constantly, and I'm alive. Oh my goodness, my goodness. So let's get into this. There was never evidence of a cleanup. So this is where we get into a problem, right? Because the theory is that there was a cleanup, but they were still able to know there was some trail. So what happens? Prosecutors said in court that Merkel testified about forensic evidence gathered using Blue Star, a chemical reagent used by investigators to locate traces of blood evidence. In court, Merkel stated that the crime scene photographs taken at the time showed absolutely nothing because of a malfunction with the camera. However, prosecutors said a forensic expert confirmed that 7 photos clearly showed blue chemiluminescence, which could indicate blood reacting with the Blue Star reagent, in 4 separate locations across the dining room and kitchen floors. None of these visibly reactive areas were marked, seized, or tested by investigators, the probable cause statement said. Now, again, we're reading, this is all the arguments being alleged against the investigator in the perjury case. Instead, 9 floor samples were cut and removed from a general path between the patio door and the kitchen drawers and sink, areas investigators later claimed had been cleaned of blood. However, the photos clearly show that none of those 9 sampled areas exhibited any visible Blue Star reaction. Subsequent laboratory analysis confirmed that none of the collected tiles tested positive for the presence of blood. In contrast, the areas that did exhibit the most obvious signs of potential blood evidence were ignored entirely. So let's break this down. They end up only looking at 9 floor samples between the patio door and the kitchen drawers and the sink. Can we figure out a bit of the layout? It seems like in the photos, there's signs of a reaction that could indicate blood, but they don't do further testing in 4 separate locations across dining room and kitchen. But they only end up testing samples, 9 tiles, patio door and kitchen drawers and sink. So it seems like they leave the dining room out. They don't test for that. Let's see. Essentially, both photographs and lab testing of the area the dog would have walked through showed no traces of blood evidence on the kitchen tiles. In fact, the lead forensic technician who initially processed the scene said she didn't do any Blue Star testing during the original investigation. She said it wasn't necessary because the visibly dirty kitchen and dining room floors, with crumbs, dog treats, and food debris present, showed no signs of recent cleaning. So this is something that they should have realized while they were theorizing before the first trial. Lead forensic tech initially processed the scene. Original investigation. Floor was dirty. No signs of recent cleaning. So how did we end up with this theory at trial through 2 trials? It was spotless. It was clean. All we had was something that was captured on the fabric that looked like a bloody paw print. Oh my god, you guys. Oh my god. So this case, the underlying case, is the murder trial of Russ Faria in the murder of his wife Betsy. That's been overturned. It was a wrongful conviction. But the case emerging from it is perjury against Lincoln County Sheriff's investigator, Michael Merkel. Michael Merkel. Michael Merkel. So the case that's like happening now is two perjury charges because he testified in Russ's initial trial and the retrial. So, hey, Detroit Keisha. Lauren says call Dr. Russell. Yes, this is I would suggest like St. Louis, probably in Missouri, Lincoln County, right? Maybe Lincoln County, Missouri. Oh my goodness. And destined to be the Karen Reed. Did the keyword get you guys in here? You heard something about a dog and a bad investigation and perjury for an investigator. Did the algorithm say like, "Hey, Karen Reed family, let's get together once again"? Um, whole thing, whole thing. So let's see how we continue to reinforce our original theory. The Blue Star testing was only done by Merkel a week later. So Merkel comes and does this Blue Star investigation testing after a lead forensic tech already did a pass through and said there were no signs of cleaning. So then Merkel goes in and develops the theory about the dog paw print that we're not even sure just looked like a dog paw print. Lincoln County prosecutor Mike Wood said those photos and the alleged cleanup were critical to the case. So this is actually kind of nice to see, right? So this is the prosecutor. This is someone from the office. I don't know if he was on the initial trial, but he's from the body that prosecuted Russ Faria. And he's acknowledging, these specific things that we're going to tie back to Merkel, the photos and the alleged cleanup theory were critical to the case, right? So there are tons of prosecutors out there that when there's an appeal, a wrongful conviction petition, oh, you know what? Maybe there was something wrong with the photos, but there was so much else. The jury still made their decision with confidence. It wouldn't impact the outcome. So don't overturn the conviction. It's nice to see the prosecutor say, yeah, those were critical pieces of evidence and there's something wrong with them. That evidence that they testified that there was a clean up in the house is the evidence that the prosecution relied on, that they had enough evidence to move forward, Wood said. After Faria was found guilty and sent to prison in the first trial, his attorney, Joel Schwartz, fought for a second trial, finally getting to see those photos. Now, there's two Joels in this. So Joel Schwartz, when we're talking about Joel Schwartz, that is Russ Faria. That's the trial attorney. Mike Merkel also has a Joel, and I think the last name also starts with an S, representing him. So that's going to be, we got to keep that straight. 2 months prior to the second trial in the mail, I received a DVD that contained 132 fully developed photographs that show this police officer was lying in everything he testified to regarding the luminescence in the trail of blood, Schwartz said. Oof. So someone mails this to the attorney by mail, DVD. Wood added, there was never evidence of a cleanup. There was never evidence that it occurred. So the photographs didn't show that and they knew it. So they hid those. I mean, that seems logical. Like, oh my goodness. An egregious breach of trust. Wood believes there was an agenda and there was confirmation bias. In our opinion, okay, are we getting a prosecutor like really acknowledging that this is not just a harmless mistake? He says, in our opinion, manipulating evidence to point the finger at Russ. They had an early determination that was their guy and to pin it on him, said Wood. He's starting to sound like a defense attorney or an advocate. Assisting prosecuting attorney John Krameyer requested a $250,000 cash bond for Merkel. Oh, okay, for Merkel. Stating that one of the pillars of our criminal justice system is that the citizens of this country can depend upon honesty and integrity of those individuals who are entrusted with the responsibility of investigating potential criminal conduct. When that ceases to exist, the faith and trust in our judicial system is completely eroded. The defendant's conduct represents such an egregious breach of that trust that the state believes the aforementioned bond request is appropriate. And we're going to look at the coverage from what happened this week with the bond hearing. I don't actually know the details of the outcome, so we'll get to that. Merkel's attorney, Joel Eisenstein. I'm going to call him Einstein. Joel Eisenstein. Eisenstein? This feels like a word jumble. Joel E. said his client is not guilty and called the charges a political stunt. He said Wood is tying this to a previous case where Merkel put pressure on the prosecutor's office to hand over accurate discovery on the Hupp case, and the prosecutor never did. Now remember, Hupp is someone that was friends with the Faria family, and now she's set to stand trial in August of 2026 for, being the one that actually murdered Betsy Faria, not Russ. And she's already got a life sentence for a different murder. So this is interesting. This is an interesting overlap. Oh my gosh. Currently, Merkel is charged with harassment and stalking a detective in this internal investigation. The case is ongoing. Okay, so they get the update here. A judge set Merkel's bond at $50K. He must also wear a GPS monitor. Well, I wonder if those work in Lincoln County. I'm confident when this case unfolds that Merkel will be exonerated. And as for the others, and we'll see what actions will come against the prosecutor, said Eisenstein. For Schwartz, he said he never thought he'd see the day. It's justice that's been due for quite some time. If you do something like this and a man gets committed to prison for the rest of his life, you should pay a price. Wood said there is a likelihood more charges will be coming in the future for more defendants. So it's not just constrained to Merkel. Schwartz said Faria is happy, remarried, and looking ahead. He's thrilled justice is occurring, and he looks forward to Pam Hupp's trial next summer. Oh, we should watch that. We should check that one out. Yeah, that might be a good one. So many layers. Well, we're gonna look at the context next of. Let's see how Betsy got caught up. We'll see how Betsy got caught up and got caught. Let me duplicate this, make it reader. So Pam Hupp, charged with murder. And for visuals again, Pam Hupp is on the left here. Pam Hupp waited until her friend Betsy Faria was weak and lethargic from a chemotherapy treatment before she began stabbing her repeatedly as she lay on a couch under a blanket. Then she dipped the victim's socks in her own blood and spread it around the house to make it look like her husband killed her in a domestic assault, according to court documents filed Monday, charging Hupp with the 2011 murder. Now, this was back in 2021 when they arrested. This is July 2021. It's just not showing the date here. So a decade after the murder is when we're getting this. What a nut. If that's true, what a nut. Among the many, who even... Among the many oddities prosecutors noted about the crime scene was Betsy Faria's dog, who had been left outside when her husband returned home that night. Hupp was afraid of the dog, and she was the last person to see Betsy Faria alive, according to court documents outlining first-degree murder and armed criminal action charges against her. Lincoln County Prosecutor Michael Wood, again, discussed the latest developments Monday afternoon, where he also announced a new investigation, so again, this is 2021, into potential prosecutorial and police misconduct in the Betsy Faria case. Are some of the forthcoming charges and defendants, could we get out of the sheriff's office and into the, I don't know if this is like district attorney? Could be more. There could be more. Wood also said he's going to seek the death penalty against Hupp. You can watch the entire news conference. Oh, cool. Do you want to watch that? Yeah, we can watch that. Let's get This was back again in July 12th, 2021. we'll skip forward to some action. Mic checks. Like 10 different people setting up the mic. All right, right about here.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here today. I'm pleased to announce that we have some significant information to give in the investigation into the death of Betsy Faria. But before we get started, I wanted to thank the Lincoln County Sheriff Rick Harrell and the City of St. Charles Police Chief Ray Jinks for joining me here today, specifically with Chief Jinks. As we came in 2019 and we started to work this case, the chief was more than willing to help work with us. He agreed to house our evidence. He gave us all of his facilities, provided us with every amount of resource that we needed in order to work this case. And specifically with Sheriff Harrell, when he came in 6 months ago, Sheriff Harrell made this case a priority for him. He put all of his best detectives on this case. We worked it diligently, and I'm happy to say that 6 months later, they were able to come to a resolution that we were able to present today. So as you may know, I'm here to announce that we have filed murder charges in the first degree against Pamela Hupp in the stabbing death of Betsy Faria. We will be seeking the death penalty in this case. I do not take lightly the decision to pursue the death penalty, but this case stands alone in its heinousness and depravity, such that it shocks the conscience. For a decade, this case has loomed large as a dark cloud over Lincoln County. And in late December 2018, as I was sworn in as the prosecuting attorney here in this spot, I knew we had to work diligently to begin a thorough review of the facts surrounding Betsy's death. It's an obligation I owe to the family of Betsy Faria, as well as to the citizens of this county. After a complete and comprehensive review and investigation, I came to the conclusion that beyond a reasonable doubt, Pamela Hupp killed Betsy Faria, and I believe her motivation was simple: for greed. Just 4 days prior to Betsy's death, Pam Hupp became the sole beneficiary of Betsy Faria's $150,000 life insurance policy. Pamela Hupp, the facts in this case are quite simply indisputable. Pamela Hupp was the last person to see Betsy alive. Cell phone records indicate that she was at or near the home at the time of the death. She knew that Betsy's husband would not be home that night. She lied about her whereabouts. She lied about the details. And lastly, she murdered an innocent man in cold blood to prevent herself from being considered a suspect. The probable cause statement attached to charging documents outline in great detail an extremely compelling circumstantial murder case, one that is very difficult to deny. Yet prosecutors and investigators denied it all the same. Sadly, all of these facts were available to prosecutors at the beginning. Even while Betsy's husband was twice prosecuted for her death, this was one of the poorest examples of investigative work that I, as well as my team, have ever encountered.
You should have said that
driven
louder.
Largely by ego, working toward an agenda rather than truth. And because of this, I'm also announcing today that we are launching an investigation into the potential prosecutorial and police misconduct in the Faria investigation. During the course of my investigation into Betsy Faria's death, I came across information that could potentially lead to criminal prosecution. Broken down into two simple parts, the allegations in the federal petition for the violations of Mr. Faria's civil rights were largely corroborated by our investigation. It's clear to me that investigators made up their minds early into Betsy's death and that they never once considered Pamela Hupp as a suspect, despite overwhelming evidence. The prosecutor jumped to an initial rush to judgment and came to their conclusion too early. That investigation was mismanaged from the beginning. Russell Faria was the primary suspect in Betsy's death, yet he had 4 alibi witnesses, no blood on him despite a gruesome murder scene, cell phone towers along with video evidence at 2 separate locations put him elsewhere at the time of her death. His alibi was corroborated by this evidence. Most concerning, however, is that information came to my attention from 3 separate and independent sources that witnesses were asked to lie on the stand by the prosecutor in that case. Shortly after the acquittal, it came to my attention during our investigation that a destruction order had been drafted by the sheriff's office shortly after the acquittal of Russ Faria, which would have destroyed all of the physical evidence in this case. This is very troubling to me. I believe in transparency.
All right, because hold on now. So Dolly had just made this comment, says, wait, they're going to prosecute someone after they wrongfully prosecuted someone else first? Yeah, so, that's kind of rare too. Like someone's wrongfully convicted and then everything else is just up in the air forever, right? Oh, we got the wrong one. Oh, well. But here they're actually pursuing something else. And isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? This team was like, well, hold on. The sheriff's office is just going to destroy all the evidence after the conviction was overturned. I mean, maybe they had a policy that it was like 8 years or whatever time frame something triggered. That is kind of no bueno, because if that happened, then we'd be here. We'd be here.
And the citizens of Lincoln County need to know that no one here is above the law, not prosecutors, not police officers. I will be conducting this investigation along with Sheriff Harrell. We expect that we will finish this internal investigation by early December. I cannot stress enough how important it is that we have full and complete transparency. Because of that, after my investigation is final, the sheriff and I will produce a report on our findings and release them to the public. At that point, it is possible criminal charges could be filed. I don't know where this investigation will go, but I will take it wherever it leads me. My only goal here today is to establish confidence and to restore faith in the Lincoln County justice system. I'd like to thank everybody for making it out today, and with that said, I can take a few questions.
With charges in the investigation into the investigation of this case, would that include possibly the prosecutors, not just investigators?
Certainly, we'll look into that once the facts develop a little more. We'll be able to see whether there's anything that we can charge. What I can confidently say is that if anyone had perjured themselves on this case, perjury in a murder prosecution carries it's a Class A felony. There's no statute of limitations that's associated with that.
Go, Brooklyn. So if you guys heard that, perjury, I guess there's different tiers. So if you commit perjury specifically in something like a murder trial, that bumps it to a Class A felony, so no statute of limitations. So there you go. I think Brooklyn was asking that earlier. Interesting.
The facts in the probable cause statement to a layperson look overwhelming if they point towards Pam Hupp. Could you comment on how in the world professional prosecutors and investigators could have missed what a layperson could see?
To me, it felt as if this was confirmation bias in its purest form, that they had made their decision. This was largely driven by ego, that once they had made their decision, I could confidently say they weren't interested in finding any other evidence that pointed anywhere else. So the only evidence they ever wanted to look at was anything that they could possibly try to use, manufacture, conceal in order to make the prosecution against Russ Faria. At that point, after the case had gone far enough during the first trial and we get to the point of a second trial, I think investigators and prosecutors then doubled down because they knew how deep they had gotten. And at that point, you have to believe that they had to be concerned that their own civil liability was on the line, and certainly it was. And they got hit with a $2 million settlement, not because anybody did a fantastic job.
The people behind the possible destruction of evidence, are they still working for Lincoln County, and how was that discovered?
Not to my knowledge. None of the actors that I've discussed are currently working with the sheriff's office, but it was discovered Actually, I believe, Chris, you caught it when we had answered a sunshine request regarding some of the collateral information. But one of my investigators who was working through my office, who was helping me put the case together, spent a voluminous amount of time gathering documents and evidence, put that together, and then flagged it and said, Mike, I think we have a problem. At that point, once we saw that, is when we had requested that the city of St. Charles hold our evidence because we thought that potentially it could be compromised.
Do you think there may have been others that were wrongfully accused and convicted? And are you looking into any of those cases with those previous investigators and prosecutor?
What I can say is that the sheriff and I have met. We expect to work diligently to try to make a comprehensive review. Obviously, there was a change in the law recently that gives the prosecutor the ability to take a new look at those cases to see if there was anything that was wrongful. So I do expect that we will be working diligently to re-review anything that could potentially have been wrongful.
Okay. Actually, I do have one other question.
What you got?
Mike, with the, excuse me, now you are seeking the death penalty. Obviously, this is not something that you take lightly. What made you decide to go after Pam Hupp in seeking the death penalty in this case?
So one of the aggravating factors we're obviously able to rely on with the death penalty is the fact that she murdered for the insurance money. But I will specifically say that this case struck very deep to our souls and our conscience with a level of depravity not regularly seen. What I could say is that we have a person who not only murdered her friend, then mutilated the body, staged the scene, testified against an innocent man, and then once he was acquitted, went and murdered someone in St. Charles County to prevent herself from being considered as a suspect. And if I can't pick a case that was more depraved than that, this is it.
When will she be arraigned?
So it's on the responsibility of the prosecutor's office to have her brought in from the Department of Corrections. Depending on how quickly their turnaround is, we could anticipate as early as Friday, but it certainly depends on whatever the Department of Corrections and whatever the courts are able to schedule us. So it could be a quick turnaround, as quick as Friday, but it could also go into next week. It's hard to say.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
That was a nice, clean little press conference there. I hope they've still got the same like mojo. This was 2021. We're so far away. This is about to be 4 years ago next month. So let me make sure I go back to the right article. I think we were here because okay, yep, the YouTube link is here. So I think we're about to get into more of the details of what Pam Hupp did. So for Always Forever for Life was joining late, guys. If you're tuning in, the underlying case to all of this was, Russ Faria. When he was on trial, he was convicted for the murder of his wife, Betsy. He was tried twice, wrongfully convicted. That's been overturned. The actual alleged killer, who's already got a life sentence for a different murder that was committed to throw the investigators off the trail of finding out she might have been involved in the murder of Betsy, is now facing a murder trial in August 2026 for the murder of Betsy. And this month, the investigator, and there could be more charges and more defendants, but one of the investigators, Mike Merkel, was charged with 2 counts of perjury. So, okay. Before I lose this, let me open the link that Factual Lie is recommending, and I'll pin it for the end of the stream. That pesky GDPR. Okay, so I have that open. And Steph says, so if they didn't try framing Russ and did it right the first time, and she wouldn't have had the opportunity to kill someone else, so someone else is dead because of it. That's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, I'm hooked on it. Like, Like, I mean, you hear the stories. I don't think I used to, like, follow trials online as much. Like, if something wasn't accessible on TV, I don't really think I was going to YouTube until, I don't know, maybe, like, 2021, 2022. But this is just another thing. We just looked at the Megan Jackson trial, and the short summary, we're gonna get more details I haven't seen yet in this article that's on the screen. But the short summary of what I heard about Pam Hupp reminded me of Megan Jackson and what was going on in that trial. So here's a quote from the press conference we just watched. You know, one of the aggravating factors was she murdered for the insurance money. This case struck very deep into our souls and into our conscience with a level of depravity we haven't seen before, he said. She murdered her friend, mutilated the body, staged the scene, testified against an innocent man in court. If that, oh my God, we have to watch that. Since there were appeals here, there might be ways that I can get the transcript from the trial 1 or 2. I'm assuming she testified in at least one. But if her testimony was included in the appeal, that's kind of an easy way to get transcripts when they're otherwise unavailable. So I would love to look at that. I would love to see, assuming that she did this, she's guilty as accused. I would love to see how she testified. And he says, I can't pick a case more depraved than that. This is it. There has long been suspicion that Hupp was involved in Faria's death. Hupp was the last person to see Faria alive before she was stabbed dozens of times and left for dead in her home on December 27th, 2011. Hupp became the sole beneficiary, so here's the insurance, of Faria's $150 life insurance policy just days before she died. And original investigators didn't even look at this. Hupp is the second person to be charged with murder in this case. So background here, Faria's husband, Russ, was convicted of the crime in 2013 and spent more than a year in prison, but was acquitted in a retrial 2 years ago. Oh, he was, okay. I had it wrong. I thought it was like he got an exoneration after the fact. But he was acquitted in trial 2. Shout out to trial 2. Shout out to trial 2. Because we know that the investigator testified in trial 2. But however that trial played out, we got a different result. He agreed to a $2 million settlement from an insurance company for the Lincoln County police officers who investigated the case. Do we get more names in this article? Let me open this up. Maybe this will give us a hint on other names to look for. So this article was from March 30th, 2020. Let's see. Under certain state laws include, oh wait, this is a privacy policy. Is this not an article anymore? Okay, we've got to read it with all this stupid stuff on the screen. Sorry, guys. So Russ Faria spent more than 2 years. Insurance company. They agreed to the settlement worth more than $2 million. Joel Schwartz, one of the lawyers who represented Faria, said the two sides came to an agreement Monday. So defense attorney in the criminal matter and also civil side. But the deal had not been signed yet. In the settlement, the officers will not admit to wrongdoing during the investigation. Faria and his lawyers said the officers arrested him without cause and wrongfully focused on him rather than Betsy's close friend Pam Hupp. He was found guilty and the conviction was overturned, and he won the retrial a year later. There's Hupp while she's in custody. Prosecutors believe the murder of Gumpenberger was all part of her plan to distract from the investigation into Faria's 2011 murder. Russ spent 3 years in prison for her death before he got a new trial and his freedom. This isn't really much context in this article. Sorry, guys. So Hupp collected Betsy's insurance money and reportedly later told investigators she was also Betsy's lover. She had to make an excuse why that money would suddenly be left to her. That's where my brain's going. Hupp has never been charged with the death of Betsy Faria. In 2019, the major case squad of Greater St. Louis said it would launch a new investigation into the case. And, I get it. People can have affairs that people wouldn't expect on the side. But my commentary here was specifically, I feel like this was an excuse after the fact to make sure it wouldn't look bad that the insurance beneficiary changed to Pam days before she's murdered. Yeah, so that wasn't that much context, but that little bit there was new. We were on this article. So the $2 million settlement, the officers did not admit to wrongdoing. After this settlement, the only way that I can describe Pam Hupp is evil incarnate, Russ Faria said Monday. Compare her to people like Charles Manson. Wood said Monday he plans to investigate whether there was criminal wrongdoing on the part of the investigators and former prosecutors on the case. We heard all this. Driven by ego, they weren't interested in finding any evidence that would point in any other direction. By the time they got to the second trial, they doubled down. Hupp is already serving life. She entered an Alford plea. They accepted an Alford plea from this lady? Guys, we're getting the whole bingo card. Oh my God. Okay, so sentenced to life without parole. Well, how did this Alford plea play out? She got to maintain her innocence and they gave her life. What are these shoes? All right, so here's actually some details. Here's the details of what happened with Pam and Lewis. And I've got to make this ad-free. I can't do that. All right. So Pam Hupp was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole Monday in the murder of Louis Gumpenberger. Gumpenberger, who had a traumatic brain injury, was killed at Hupp's home in O'Fallon, Missouri in August of 2016. Prosecutors said in 2016, Pam Hupp lured Gumpenberger over to her home and shot and killed him while telling a 911 dispatcher he had held her at knife point and chased her into her home. So is she on 911 while this happens? That's how it reads. 5 on your side's Jacob Long was in the courtroom when Hupp was sentenced. He spoke with the mother of and sister of Gumpenberger. I never thought my family would be here, the sister of Louis Gumpenberger gave an emotional victim impact statement in court and called Hupp a disgusting monster who only cares about herself. It's looking that way. In June, Hupp pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and armed criminal action in Gumpenberger's death. Hupp entered an Alford plea in court. Alford plea, she accepts the fact that the state had enough evidence to convict her of the murder of Gumpenberger, but she can maintain her innocence. The guilty plea was part of an agreement Hupp reached with the state. In exchange, St. Charles County prosecuting attorney Tim Lomar agreed to take the death penalty off the table. In 2017, she entered a not guilty. Hupp has previously insisted shooting Gumpenberger in her home was self-defense. Prosecutors believe that was all part of her plan to distract from another investigation in Lincoln County, where Russ Faria's wife Betsy was murdered in 2011. Russ spent 2 years in prison for her death. Then he gets his freedom. Hupp gets the insurance money. Faria was at sentencing. There you go. There we go. And she is currently, at least at the time of the writing of this article, was in custody at women's prison in Vidalia Onions. Wow. It just, when someone dies and there's funeral plans, funeral homes will help you do the work to look for insurance money and payouts because, they do that little bit of work. It can help assure that they'll get paid for the funeral services, right? So it's mutually beneficial for funeral homes to help you do that. It's not like people wouldn't have found out who the insurance beneficiary was. So would it have been that difficult? I know there's a type of forensics that goes and tracks these accounts, looks for traces of bank accounts and policies. One insurance policy, one beneficiary, seems like one company, right? They couldn't find out when it changed. They couldn't subpoena information about when that would have been changed. Like, that's just insane to me. That right there is just such a huge red flag. Now, would I convict someone just because an insurance policy changed if there wasn't other evidence? No, that's not what I'm saying. But as far as an investigation, that seems like something you'd look at, see, and you'd get rid of your tunnel vision to someone that didn't do that thing. And you'd say, hey, maybe this person could be a suspect. Maybe. Just a little big maybe. Oh my gosh. What article were we on? Closing that one. We were, I think we were here. All right, so back to the stage home invasion. Hupp shot and killed Gumpenberger during a stage home invasion and attempted robbery inside her O'Fallon, Missouri home, claiming she was acting in self-defense. Prosecutors called it a desperate attempt to try to take away from her involvement in Faria's case. In the summer of 2019, following Hupp's Alford plea, Wood announced he would be reopening the Faria investigation. Now, this is what I think is going to be interesting, because we heard a murmur in like 2 articles ago where Mike Merkel's attorney, Joel E., it seems like an argument they're going to make is that there's an issue already between Mike Merkel and Wood, the now prosecutor that's leading the charge here, relating to a different case. So I think this is getting to that overlap, right? Wood announces he's going to reopen this investigation. I think we're going to start to see the uh-ohs. The major case squad of Greater St. Louis was part of the review. As part of the major case review, all physical evidence was relocated to the St. Charles City Police Department to preserve investigative integrity. Because remember, the sheriff's office was about to destroy it. In a letter, Wood said no officers related to any Lincoln County enforcement agency would be investigating the Faria case. Guys, they didn't let them investigate themselves. Look at that. What a novel concept. They said, you might have been the ones doing this wrong. There might be an integrity issue here. Yeah, we're going to do this investigation externally from you guys. That is a rarity. We found the unicorn. Shortly after the review was announced, the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office posted online approximately 1,200 pages of major case reports and files from the original Faria investigation in the spirit of transparency after renewed attention on the story. Okay, that's cool. Although I have questions, because if it's reports and it's written from Mike Merkel, this could have been a move to potentially rehabilitate the work that was done in the original investigation. Rehabilitative rather than for the stated intention of transparency. I think Mr. Gumpenberger and Pam Hupp's mother would still be here today if Lincoln County had done their job properly. And was it Curious Lay that pointed it out in the chat? Or Steph? But yeah, I mean, and mother. Pam Hupp's mother. So another victim. But Gumpenberger, his death, we wouldn't have gotten there if this wasn't playing out this way. Crazy. So court documents filed on Monday, and again, this article's from 2021, July 2021, outline the evidence prosecutors used to issue the charges against her, and the notes begin by noting how Hupp was the last person to see Betsy alive. Hupp told investigators Betsy Faria and her husband Russ Faria were having marital problems. And Betsy Faria wanted Hupp to distribute the life insurance proceeds to the victim's 2 daughters and to her mother, Janet Meyer, if she died. They answered my question, chat. They delivered. I had a question in my head. I bet you guys know what my question was. Here's the answer. But prosecutors say Hupp never gave the money to Betsy Faria's daughters. Who's surprised? Who's surprised? And later told investigators the money belonged to her. That's crazy. You are so intent on throwing someone off your trail that you will stage a kidnapping, bring someone in your house and stab them, call 911 and stab them and saying they're holding a knife to you or whatever. but you won't let go of, what was it, $150,000? You'll stage a murder to distract. You'll stage a self-defense situation to murder someone to distract. But you won't give up that $150,000 to get people to stop thinking that you'd have motive or be guilty. Following the family's Christmas holiday, well, damn. Betsy Faria was scheduled to receive chemotherapy on Tuesday, the day of the murder, for the reoccurrence of her breast cancer. Yeah, and that's something I'd imagine, Betsy confides in friends and family, I'm not going to be available that day. Throughout the day, Hupp tracked the victim according to the documents, but the documents do not specify how Hupp followed the victim's movements. Oh my God, tell me Hupp did better cell phone tracking than the initial investigation. Despite being told repeatedly by Betsy that she did not wish to see Hupp that day, Hupp stalked her, all the while offering to transport Betsy to therapy and visits, according to the documents. Hupp arrived unannounced and unexpectedly at Janet Meyer's house in the early morning where Betsy had spent the night. So Hupp goes to Betsy's mom's house. Having been told not to come to the chemotherapy treatment, Hupp showed uninvited and unexpected yet again. After chemotherapy, Hupp appeared again at Janet Meyer's home, where Betsy had been playing board games with friends. Uh-oh. Hupp insisted on driving Betsy home to Troy, even though transportation was already arranged, and despite later claiming she was unfamiliar with the Troy area. How did the investigators not have a red flag for this lady? What? Prosecutors also allege Hupp and Betsy Faria left for Troy about 6:30 p.m. on the day of the murder. And Betsy Faria promised to answer her daughter's call to authorize a change to her daughter's cell phone plan. And look, I've been that teenager that needed to get a new phone, and I needed my mom to make sure she would authorize it when I was at the store. So if they're saying I'm going to call you at this seems like a serious commitment. But Betsy didn't answer at 7:15, 7:25, and 7:27 p.m. Betsy never answered despite the promise to do so, indicating she was likely already dead or lay dying, according to the documents. This is consistent with the body's deterioration when examined by medical personnel 2.5 hours later. Prosecutors also say Hupp texted Betsy Faria's phone at 7:20 p.m. that she was now home in an attempt to establish an alibi that she was away from the residence at the time of the murder. Ooh, what a window. But cell phone data showed Hupp's cell phone was still being tracked by the same cell phone receiver for the Faria home, according to the documents. So presumably, if she was already en route home, she would have been in another, her closest tower ping would have been a different tower. Again, stuff that they used Russ's cell phone stuff, kind of, sort of. They had it, and it seems to have been more exculpatory than inculpatory, but they clearly had it. And yet they could have also looked at this if they ever saw Hupp as a suspect. They could have seen that that would have been untrue. That this text message was sent at a point that it wouldn't have been possible for her to actually be home. Hupp then told investigators she meant to say she was home free, meaning she was on roads familiar to her, because she changed her story. I insisted on taking her back to Troy. Well, why would you insist so strongly? Oh, I don't know. I didn't insist strongly. I don't even know the Troy area that well. This is crazy. Shout out to Happily Angry Lawyer. Investigator facing perjury charges. You have my attention. Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the things. This is like, I read this between the Tyrone Blackburn, Joe Tacopina rabbit hole yesterday. It was just another one that came up. Let's see. Prosecutors say evidence including blood spatter, the position of the victim's body, and other physical evidence found in the den suggests the victim was lying on a sofa covered by a blanket when the attack occurred and was completely caught off guard. The fact that the victim was laying down when the attack occurred suggests that she knew her killer and felt comfortable enough in their presence to place herself in a vulnerable position, according to the documents. Prosecutors also allege Hupp soaked a pair of, this is the sock thing. They socked her, Pam soaked these socks in Betsy's blood and used them to smear blood on the knife and light switch plate and put the socks back onto the victim after she had died. Bloodstains on the socks resemble impressions of fingers and not toes, according to the documents. Investigators believe the killer placed the socks on her hands after the murder occurred to plant evidence into the crime scene and then put the socks back onto the victim after accomplishing his or her goal. Now, if they can deduce this, if this is a theory, how was there a separate theory that this person cleaned everything? How do we have, well, everything points to fingers, someone had something on and was pressing the liquid blood onto things. How do you reconcile with an investigator, Mike Merkel, swearing that the scene was cleaned? Because this is the opposite of trying to clean the scene. This is trying to make it look like a certain thing occurred. Oh my God. Hupp told investigators to do a forensic examination of Betsy Faria's laptop, which they did, and found a document written by an unknown author on a program that wasn't installed on Betsy Faria's computer. It said Betsy Faria feared her husband would murder her, according to the documents. The document was created and downloaded to Betsy Faria's laptop the day before the life insurance beneficiary changed to Hupp. What the hell were these investigators doing? Prosecutors also added Hupp knew Russ Faria would not be home on the day of the murder, and chemotherapy treatments made Betsy weak and lethargic. Betsy's dog was outside when Russ got home, and Hupp was afraid of her dog, according to the documents. The motive for the murder was money, according to the documents. Look at this lady. In comments following the press conference, Russ said he believed Hupp did not act alone. It's long been my belief that Hupp had accomplices, and I hope that is brought to light and that they get prosecuted as well. Hupp's mother, Shirley Newman, was found dead in 2013 beneath the balcony of her home in a senior living community near Fenton. In November 2017, the St. Louis County Medical Examiner changed the manner of Newman's death from accidental to undetermined. The deaths of Faria and Gumpenberger have been a subject of numerous Dateline, and you guys mentioned that in the chat. I think Leigh said that there's a Dateline on this, and a podcast series and upcoming TV series co-produced by NBC. So I would assume Faria or Hupp would bring that up. But holy moly, like a million things that don't reconcile. And when we watched that press conference, one of the questions someone asked was, how did the initial investigators miss things that seemed like common sense to us? So, just crazy. Yeah. Was the investigator's name Proctor? Well, it's Mike. There's a Mike. And Bukake. Just crazy. Did I have any other articles? Sorry, I opened a bunch of tabs. I think we got through the articles. There may have been one more. Let me double check. Because you see how all of them have like a little extra piece of context that isn't in another article. Okay, that's all the backstory. So we are caught up. We are going to get to the hearing that just took place. The perjury issue. All right. So Merkel, and this is not Merkel, this is Betsy and Russ. So I hate sometimes when felony charges for former deputy. I think like if people weren't familiar with this picture, they might think that this is who's being charged. So I always hate that. Michael Merkel, former sheriff's deputy. Well, that's good. He's not on like paid leave or anything, it seems like. Was charged on Tuesday with 2 counts of perjury for allegedly giving false testimony during Russ Faria's 2013 murder trial. and in his retrial. That's why there's two. Let's see. We got the background context. Let's see what they say here. In 2013, due in part to testimony from Pam Hupp, his wife's friend, Faria was convicted by a jury and sentenced to life in prison. Faria's conviction was later overturned. At his retrial in November 2015, Faria's defense attorney Joel Schwartz pointed to Hupp as the person with the motive and opportunity to kill Betsy, which he had not been allowed to do in the first trial. That's why, do you see how, remember I said earlier? Oh, wait, it wasn't two convictions and then he gets exonerated through a reversal of something. I was like, oh, he was acquitted in the second trial. You see the difference this could make? He wasn't allowed to point to Hupp in the first trial. And it seems like in the, this is difficult to parse with the writing. They say Hupp was not called by either side to testify. I don't know if that means the second trial only, because we heard that she did give testimony. So perhaps she was only called in the one. So Faria was acquitted after they're able to point to a third-party culprit. But Leah Askey, now Cheney, and the Lincoln County prosecutor at the time, who led the state's case against Russ at both trials, continued to maintain that Russ was Betsy's killer. So Leah's not buying this whole thing about third-party culprit. The case took an unexpected turn in August 2016 when Hupp shot and killed the man she claimed had accosted her in the driveway of her O'Fallon home. She said he demanded Russ's money. What? So in August 2016, Pam Hupp has this whole incident go down where, Louis Gumpenberger ends up dead. And she claims that Gumpenberger showed up asking for Russ Faria's money. Investigators determined that the man, Louis Gumpenberger, was not an intruder, but was instead an unwitting participant in a scheme Hupp had devised to frame Russ Faria and portray him as a violent person. Yeah, putting the document on the PC. Yeah, like this is a lot. And I can do the little, innocent till proven guilty, but, she's already got a life sentence without parole. So there's that. According to investigators, Gumpenberger, who had a brain injury, was approached by Hupp, posing as a Dateline producer. Investigators believe Hupp lured Gumpenberger into her car with a bogus promise of money to reenact a 911 call for an upcoming episode, something Dateline would never do. A week after the incident, Hupp was charged with Gumpenberger's. Oh, I have this thing on my screen. My bad. We get to the Alford plea in the case, allowing her to avoid a death penalty. Without admitting guilt, Hupp acknowledged that prosecutors had enough evidence to convict her of killing Gumpenberger, and that's where she gets a life in prison. Mike looks at this case again. Do we get anything else new? Here we go. So Mike Merkel. Deputy Merkel was involved in the original murder investigation and was another key witness against Betsy's husband in both trials. According to the Lincoln County Prosecutor's Office, Merkel knowingly testified falsely at Russ Faria's. And again, this is perjury charges. This is prosecutors using their discretion to press charges against Merkel. This is the prosecutor saying Merkel knowingly testified falsely at these trials. Typically, we only have defense attorneys arguing that, and the prosecution's like, no. No. So he testified falsely at Russ's first trial that photographs taken at the crime scenes documenting a forensic test for the presence of blood showed absolutely nothing. What did we just read about the smearing and the socks and the light switch? Merkel also testified that the camera used to document that test malfunctioned. According to prosecutors, the camera did not malfunction. In fact, it captured 132 digital images, all of which contained complete metadata. This is crazy. Mike Merkel lied because the photos didn't show what he said they were going to show. He said there was a cleanup of blood, and there never was one, said Wood. Can you imagine not wanting to be wrong that badly? I've always held the opinion that this was an orchestrated and well-organized effort among all of law enforcement. Oh, to manipulate and secrete evidence in order to secure a conviction against Russ Faria. Maybe we'll get more names. We do have more evidence that other members of law enforcement perjured themselves, and we will be developing more charges in the next few months. So this is a recent article. This is like from June. So this is still, we looked at that press conference from 2021. This is now June of this year is what we're reading about. Oh, I can't wait to see how this goes. So in 2020, Sheriff Rick Harrell ran for office in part, he said, because of the mishandling of the Betsy Faria murder investigation. He said, my goal was to turn things around and rebuild public trust. Harrell worked with Mike Wood and the Lincoln County Prosecutor's Office to conduct an internal investigation into possible police misconduct. It took a long time, starting with the original investigation and the court transcripts, which are expensive. And when this is done, we're going to be going over to a Delphi transcript fundraising stream over on Nick Staro's channel with a whole panel of guests. Shout out to Affordable Transcripts. And it had to be pulled apart and scrutinized, and this is now the end result of it, said Sheriff Harrell. Harrell went on to say it was important that the truth be exposed so the community could understand how it happened, and that it wasn't by accident, that it took bad actors to take steps and see that an innocent man was sent to prison. So pretty cool that in this scenario, again, like super exceptional, you have a sheriff and a prosecutor like, bad things happened. It's misconduct. There's names, not just an innocent mistake. For Russ Faria, the charges against Merkel were welcome news. Oh, so is this Russ? Yeah, so Russ says it has been a long time coming and was particularly refreshing to get the news nearly on the anniversary of my release from prison, which was on June 15th, 2015. Cool. So that's like it took a decade, but it's cool that it's near that moment for him. Faria told Dateline. I'm looking forward. So there's got to be a new Dateline then. It's got to be a new Dateline. I'm looking forward to working with Mike Wood and his team and help make sure that Merkel and his counterparts can never do this to anyone again. Mike Merkel's attorney, Joel Eisenstein. Okay, so they were spelling it wrong in the other article. There's an extra S here. It's not Eisenstein. Joel Eisenstein told Dateline Mr. Merkel is going to be completely exonerated. Eisenstein, and it's just so they're going to try to defend Merkel the same way that Russ probably was defended. But at that point in time, prosecutors and police didn't want to hear it coming from Russ. Right? Eisenstein said the charges are a political stunt, and the filing of this raises more questions than answers. These aren't the only charges he's facing. In 2022, Merkel was charged with stalking and harassing the detective leading the misconduct investigation for the sheriff's office. Oop! Merkel pled not guilty to the charges. We believe the motive was to prevent the internal investigations from moving forward, Mike Wood told Dateline at the time of those charges and arrest. Despite that alleged effort on Merkel's part, the misconduct investigation continued. We'd always suspected that there was corruption involved at the sheriff's office at the time, and this particular instance reaffirms our belief that these people were willing to do the things that are criminal in nature in order to continue to cover wrongdoing that occurred in the past, Prosecutor Wood said at the time of the arrest. Pam Hupp has repeatedly denied having any involvement in Betsy Faria's murder. She's scheduled to go to trial August of 2026. So there we go, guys. That is... Let's get... Do I have a picture up? I had a picture up before we... Here we go. There we go. They said, 5 on your sides. Camera captured the moment Merkel was taken outside in handcuffs and escorted to the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, the very same office he used to work for. Oh, here, we get some context here, new context. This is at the hearing. Merkel's attorney, Joel Eisenstein. Eisenstein or Einstein? I'm going to go crazy. Said there is no evidence that his client's testimony against Russ Faria led to his conviction. So are we not arguing that his testimony wasn't perjury? Or just saying it didn't impact the conviction? He also told the judge this was a victimless crime. The prosecutor fought back, calling that statement egregious, and pointed to Russ Faria, who was present in the courtroom, saying Faria will never get his time back. Like, hello? And again, going back to the idea that if this was investigated properly and perhaps Pam Hupp was in custody earlier, 2012, 2013, Louis Gumpenberger might be alive. Merkel's attorney finished the hearing with a not guilty plea. Faria spent more than 3 years in prison. I'll repeat. Eisenstein tells 5 on your side, the judge did what he thought was right. I'll do what I think is right. Very simple. The defendant, he's presumed innocent until proven guilty. Fair enough. Probably not wise to say this is, I get that you're arguing it's a victimless crime. Because that's what you know, that can help you in your arguments at a bond hearing. Oh boy. Eisenstein continued by saying, one of the things the state has to do is prove that the comments made by this witness and 3 other witnesses who testified the same as Merkel did is to show that what they testified to, even if untrue, was material to the conviction. The same testimony was rendered in trial number 1, the same testimony rendered in trial number 2. One was guilty, one was not guilty. What's material, what's not material? It'll be interesting to see how they prove that. Yeah, but it's not suddenly immaterial because the results change because different evidence was presented. This is material evidence. You know, you're saying that someone tried to clean the scene, and now the defense also gets to talk about a third-party culprit. It's still material. Oh my gosh, we have to figure out how this goes. Faria told 5 on your side he can't get lost time back. I'm a victim, my family and friends are victims. The community is a victim of that crime because it put a black mark on the community for Lincoln County and Troy all these years. I think it's important for justice to be served, that the dirty cops that should be serving us come to light so this doesn't happen to others. Faria said he hopes to work with state prosecutors to be a witness in Merkel's case. The next court date for Merkel is July 31st for a prelim. We got a preliminary hearing on July 31st. And again, Pam Hupp currently scheduled for August 2026, you guys. Yeah, there are a lot of names here, Brooklyn. Brooklyn says, I can't even follow the names and who did what. I'm lost. I'm contributing to it because I'm getting hung up on the misspelling of Eisenstein, Eisenstein. We're just going to go with Mr. E. Mr. E. Yeah, a lot of stuff flying around here. It was kudos to what the new sheriff that just said, like, hey, the old stuff wasn't right. There was wrongdoing going on, and we want to make it right. I appreciate that one acknowledgement there from the new sheriff. Oh, guys, do you see any overlaps here or things that you're seeing here that you wish you saw in other districts? You know, maybe we don't think that something was great here. Let's not let any of those parties where things might be lacking integrity investigate themselves and find out if they had integrity or not. Let's let somebody else do it that's detached and not involved. I would love to see that more. I would love to see that more. Holy moly, rest in peace to Betsy. Rest in peace to Louis and the mom. We didn't get into what could have happened to the mom, but it seems like Pam Hupp could be like a serial, selfishly motivated killer. Not a serial in the sense that, you know, she goes after a certain type of person, like she profiles somebody, but she is a target for like insurance money or making sure she's never the one caught. And she'll just, oop, you gotta go. Just crazy. Guys, thanks for hanging out with this. This was just kind of something. I saw one article on this yesterday. I thought it'd be nice to point out that sometimes perjury charges do happen, and it can happen with an investigator, someone on the law enforcement side. So, refreshing, horrible pathway to get to this point, but nice to see that it's not just going to be swept under the rug. Oh, well, too bad, so sad. Um, this is set to redirect over to Nick Starro. I have both links ready to drop to you guys. Nick Starro is already live. It just refreshed. So he's got Criminality, Bob Mata with Defense Diaries, and I can't read what it says below her tag, sorry. And then Andrea Burkhart and Mo in the Deep End. This will redirect us there. They're doing, I don't know if they're talking about just the Delphi, the Richard Allen trial, but it is a fundraising stream for those transcripts. But I would imagine they're probably going to talk about some Karen Reed happenings too, because how can you avoid that subject this week? So this is Nick's stream. And at 7:30 p.m., so about 2 hours and 15 minutes from now, Ian Runkle of the Bailey. What a lineup. What a lineup he's about to have on his show. There's already 734 people waiting. So here's the link to that. Runkle of the Bailey, if you want to search his name to find him. Worth the follow. Hilarious creator. There you go. So I'll be in both those chats. If you're in there, I'll take you guys to the store with me, cook my dinner. We can hang out and watch these panels, break it down. JC from the D says, thank you, Kat. You make it enjoyable to watch the depravity of humanity. Yeah, that's like sometimes what it feels like when I laugh on screen. I'm like, oh my God, I'm laughing through the most tragic story. The founder of the company I work for, he was relaying a story and he started laughing while he was telling it. So we had an agent who's new to our program, but didn't really grasp how to explain how the program works, right? So he didn't have success on his first 2 deals. Third one he does, he gets it right after we coach him on it. He's got all this activity. He's about to do this great listing, get this house sold. He's got all these leads, all these bids. Everybody wants to buy this house. He's celebrating it. And then the founder of the company's name is Robert. Robert, as he's telling the story, just starts laughing. He's like, I don't know why I'm laughing. He's like, they have this incredible deal and the guy dies, the seller dies, the homeowner dies. And Robert's like, I don't know why I'm laughing. But it just happens, Sometimes things are awkward to describe or so unbelievable that the laugh isn't because it's a haha that happened. It's a, how can this be? How can this be? Yes, so in Brooklyn, Sandra Burkhart, Sandra Birchmore. Yeah, if you want some Burkhart, we have Andrea over here on Nick's channel right now. So Andrea Burkhart over there, Sandra Birchmore trial. And I would imagine probably some of the same creators that followed the Karen Reed trial will continue covering that. I bet you Nick will. But yeah, that's a funny one to mix up. Got stuck in your head there, Miss Andrea Burkhart. But yeah, so it is, anytime I'm laughing when we're talking about a sad case, it's really not meant to be insensitive to anyone impacted by things. It's just the details are unbelievable. So, and Curious Coco, no, you're joining right at the end. Yeah, so we'll follow what's going on with Mike Merkel. Seems like July 30th, he's got a preliminary hearing. This Pam Hupp thing, though, that's next year. That's slated for next year if it doesn't get pushed back further. So, and maybe they feel like it's not that big of a rush because she's already in custody on another life sentence. I don't know. Who knows? We'll have to figure that out. Oh, sweet. Factual Lie says, and it's R&M Productions. Thank you. Yeah, I think the way I split my monitor, my second monitor burned out and I still haven't gotten another one because I can't pick. I start shopping for monitors and I'm like, I don't know which one I want to get and I haven't ordered one. So I do the screen split. So I think sometimes my stuff might be smaller than what you guys see. I can't read the subline there. All right, you guys. And Curious Coco, thank you. It says glad to be back in the cat slat chat with mods. You know what? There were some parallels to familiar cases we've covered here, but there were some refreshing aspects of this one. Thanks for popping in, Coco. We're gonna get over to this transcript stream. If Happily Angry Lawyer is still in here, I'm trying to pressure, and I think he's with it. I want him to go through the complaint filed against Fat Joe by Tyrone Blackburn as the attorney writing it. Joe Tacopina is representing Fat Joe. They filed a defamation and extortion case against Terrence Dixon is the accuser. They filed in Southern District of New York back in April. And now Dixon filed his own lawsuit in the Southern District of New York. But Tyrone Blackburn has some disciplinary problems and has gotten chastised by judges in the Southern District of New York. So I'm interested in seeing where this goes. It's going to be Joe Tacopina sparring with Tyrone Blackburn. I didn't know this until you guys might know JC, not JC from the D, different JC, who did a lot of coverage of the YSL trial and has done updates for the Diddy trial. She pointed out to me that this kind of like bombshell happening in the Diddy trial, Nicole Westmoreland on cross-examination found out that there were some inconsistencies and major issues with the balcony story claim, where Brianna B, I can't pronounce her last name off the top of my head, she had claimed that Diddy like dangled her off a balcony during an incident. And I had heard that there was like attorney misrepresentations involved here, but I didn't piece together that the attorney representing Brianna was Tyrone Blackburn. So he had some bad press, bad news based on his integrity and how he approaches handling the clients he represents in the Diddy trial. So I'm very interested. You guys know I love good attorney sparring. I will be following that. I'll probably do my own video on like the April filing. But guys, bug Happily Angry Lawyer to do some content, because he's doing a lot of pro bono work, more than just for Mungtung. And I want us to rally behind him and be in his chat bugging him so he can get some funds for his legal pads and red pens and keep doing the good things that he's doing. So whenever he schedules that, I'll let you guys know, and I'll keep bugging him to go live. Jenny, good to see you. And let's see. Okay, so Curious Coco was in earlier listening in, so you got the context. Yeah, and for Always Forever for Life, I think we'll end on this. My sister tends to laugh when she's nervous, so I get it. There's that Bare Naked Lady song, One Week. You know, it was like a pop song, top of the charts like 20 years ago. But one of the lines is, I'm the kind of guy who laughs at a funeral. Like, yeah. Nerves will do that to some people, myself included. So there we go. Thank you for hanging out, you guys. Let's get over and support this panel over here. We're gonna go here, chat. We're gonna go here. So see you here in like 2 seconds. Bye, guys. Hope you all have a good one.